Hi, everybody. This is Crypto Rich, working with you to get rich with crypto, filling our pockets with crypto profits. I have with me the newest member of the BPSAA, and we're going to be finding out all about this project. It's been going for a while, enterprise blockchain solutions with privacy and security. Now, before I introduce my guest, please subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, CryptoRichYT. Like, if you join my official Telegram announcements channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, you know what you got to do. Come on. Come over to BitTube, which is privacy focused, censorship resistant. And this is because of YouTube's censorship of alternative perspectives. You can also find me on Library and on Bitchute. And subscribe, comment again. Interested in passive income? Check out this cryptocurrency savings scheme from Axion. Get a 10% bonus when you use my link and purchase through the Axion auctions. Then stake, save, earn, and spend. Link in the description below. Hey, Joe, thank you so much for making yourself available. Hey. You are one of the team at Dragon Chain. I don't even know what one of the team you are. We're going to find all that out, right? And this is like an in-depth kind of audio-visual white paper into Dragon Chain, which I know very, very little about. So do you want to start by giving us a little introduction about yourself and how you got into crypto?
Sure. So I'm a longtime software architect, now over 20 years, and I focused a lot on big systems. I mean, those were the ones that were fun, trying to make them more scalable, more secure, more flexible, and did a lot of work for federal government in the U.S., did a lot of work in telco and a few other industries. Pretty interesting career, and I ran a small group East Coast U.S. for a while when we were doing federal contracting, and one of my guys brought in the Satoshi white paper, and it was obviously very interesting. I read it over the weekend, and came back, and it was I guess you would say that it was a very interesting combination of existing tech, arranged in a brilliant way that really opened my eyes up to what other things could be possible. Not just cryptocurrency. It's a way to decentralize this proof and to do all types of things. And so we started building out everything we could, stupid things, cool things that worked, things that didn't, and that was in 2010, right? So it was pretty early. There was Bitcoin, there was Namecoin. There were a few other projects that were doing some really cool stuff that I would either contribute to or try to find out whatever I could. And I ended up leaving to go to I built up a vision of like, okay, we could scale this. We could do various things, and I had a lot of really early ideas that I wanted to test out. So I tried going through a few different startups, but they were very focused, which is good, but very niche, focused on what they were doing, and what I was trying to do was a little broader. So in 2014, Disney pulled me in, moved us out to the West Coast, to Seattle, and started building stuff there. Primarily as a regular architect, that's what I do. But we built up a team inside of Disney that started very small, of course, but was focused on building a blockchain platform, and it was called the Disney Private Blockchain Platform. And we were building a hybrid system with multiple levels of consensus that was understandable to both the technologists, the software guys, the DevOps guys inside of Disney, but also with the brass, right? So it was a very business focused system. How do you use blockchain in an enterprise when you don't want your business data or the business logic to be exposed? Yet it does help to have that proof, and it does help to be able to leverage internal and external currencies if you want, right? I mean, they have literal worlds. They have physical locations that you could do really interesting things with. So we built out early on a couple of educational courses. They have a worldwide educational system that anybody can take courses, anybody can create courses. It's really well developed, and we had the two most attended, both one business focused and one tech focused, the most attended courses on that system worldwide for the company, for all of their companies. And I think it was in 2015 that most of that happened, and it's really successful. And the reason it was successful is because we didn't talk about, oh, here's a use case, you could do this with blockchain. It was instead about trying to demystify a lot of the tech for people who might not be technologists. They might be a director of a business unit or something like that, and primarily focusing on the capabilities, right? That is, talking about how the proof works, how you can leverage the hash power of a public network, and how you can tap into it with a private network and things like this, alongside building out the actual platform. So it was really great because we would have groups come to us and say, this might be a crazy idea, but I think I could do this. And it was always brilliant because, they knew their actual problems. We could never go in, and it was really funny because if you would go in trying to assume that you knew their problems and knew what issues they wanted to go after, or if you even asked them, what's your biggest issues, they would always translate it to, oh, I really have these issues, but Joe doesn't care about those issues, right? So they would say, oh, it's this issue because they think that they needed a blockchain for X, or they had read that it's a currency system. So I need, loyalty points or something like that. They would often come up with. But once they knew the capabilities, they would bring up some, these problems that we would have never known they'd had. They were typically behavioral issues, where it would be something that they want to, they have a problem with either a customer or a vendor or an internal customer, something like this, that isn't following the process, right? And it's stuff that and if there's no transparency, and a lot of times they would come to us first with that. The transparency alone would bring them in. The ability to say, I just need to know what my inflow is, because I have no way to see it until it just pops up on a Friday afternoon when we don't want to work the weekend. And so we would get in a lot of groups like that, and we went through, I think we released 23 use cases that we worked inside of Disney. So those are publicly out there from back then, and that was probably 2016 we released that. We convinced the powers that be inside of Disney to let us run a Bitcoin node, which was interesting. And we were, the first, and it was either 2015 or early 2016. We were the first hybrid chain to tap into Bitcoin to leverage the security, the hash power, right? We weren't, for what we were doing there, we were not sending currencies, right? We were not doing some of the things. It's like, oh, you'll be able to buy a ticket with Bitcoin. No, it wasn't any of that. It was literally just that we were proving our internal data with that external data, right? In 2016, we started the process, and we were successful in getting the approval to open source it. Part of that approval came with, at Disney, their process was that when a project is open sourced, that has to be handed off to one of the devs or the team of devs personally on the outside, because the liability, and I don't know all of the legal reasons, but that's their process. So they were going to hand it off to me, but the main sponsor of the project, VP inside of Disney, was not in my chain of command, so he could not tell me, oh yeah, you can spend every Friday working on it or anything like that. So I had to basically say, yeah, Joe will take it. Joe will, all the way through the application. And so I basically also requested that we set up a foundation so that it could land somewhere in case I get hit by a bus or something, or in case somebody doesn't like it and wants to attack it, But one way or another, they proved that. Everything was released in 2016, and I ended up, we did a lot of work when it was open source with various parties, and learned that most people needed an easier way to deploy it. Inside of Disney, we had DevOps teams you could hand the stuff to, and systems would pop up. But when someone's wanting to play with a new project, it was quite an undertaking to set up the whole network, right? So we started really thinking about how to actually decentralize decentralize the outside network, and I left Disney in the middle of 2017 sometime, and we commercialized Dragon Chain in October of 2017. And so we launched it then. The primary focus is, it was a working system right out the gate, but it was an enterprise working system. And it was not something that you could, make a few clicks and turn on. But it, was a fully working system, and we had multiple people that were running it. But the focus was very much protection of business data or protection of personal data, as well as interop, and leveraging external blockchains, primarily public blockchains, for security, but also measuring that security and providing interop with traditional systems. This was kind of the way to bridge the gap between your existing accounting system and a blockchain, or your existing HR system, or anything you might do on your website to monitor or track terms acceptance, things like that. That you could always go back and prove that someone did do something, all the way up to Bitcoin and Ethereum and whatever else, right? So since then, we've done a number of things, because in the U.S., I mean, most of the Western world.
Hold on a second, Joe. Before you go on, right? So let me get this. So Dragon Chain started off as an internal project inside Disney. In October 2017, you'd left Disney and you launched it as a public project, like outside of Disney.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it was in October 2016. It was a public project released from Disney, but it was fully open source. There was not a sales org around it. There was not an entity that would host systems for you or do anything else. It was literally just open source project that anybody could use. Right.
Right. Sorry, did you say October 2016 or October 2017?
Right. October 2016 is when Disney released it. October 2017 is when we commercialized.
You commercialized it, right? Now, that was in the last few months of the last bull run before Bitcoin went up to 20,000, yes. And that was the ICO mania. So, did you do an ICO?
We did. It was really interesting. We had a model, and it was purposely built to. I was very uncomfortable with all of the ways that ICOs were running, the way that they would model their sales to step up in price so that people would dump on each other. It's pretty obvious the way they were doing it. It was creating a lot of hype, of course. I mean, it did work, but it was dangerous, right? And it was bad particularly for new users, because they were getting fleeced all over the place. And we knew, being Disney, and a lot of our community came from the fact, okay, you're Disney, and I'm interested in tech, and I'm interested in this new blockchain thing, so I'm going to join your community. So we had a lot of people in there. So we didn't call it an ICO. A lot of people called it an ICO, but it was a token sale, because our token was modeled as a tokenized micro license. Now we had all the write-ups, and we went and got a lot of guidance. We did a lot of work with some IP attorneys who also worked with some securities law attorneys, but they gave us guidance, which a very clear set of guidelines, along with a set of gray areas, things that are not known yet at the time, but maybe try not to do these things. And it wasn't semantics. Everything is below the semantics, but the guidelines are pretty interesting, and they're not open sourced yet. We hope to open source them someday, but we put in a provisional patent on it to market, to say, okay, in case they say, oh, this is doable or isn't, we've marked it that this is what we did, in a way that was pretty strong. And since that date, that patent's been granted. So it's an interesting thing. We have a patent on it, but there's a whole write-up on it. I think if you search for tokenized micro license tech brief, it's a really good write-up on the history of software licensing, how it went from just fully out, open, free, to proprietary licensing, to basically disk-based, a little physical licensing, to cloud-based or subscription-based licensing. And where we see this fitting in is after everything moved to commodity-based pricing and licensing with AWS and Azure and Google, that in the cloud, that this is the matching up of licensing to that model. That instead of saying I'm paying you, $30 a month, and whether I use it or not, and early in a project, there's a loss. Later in a project, it's a good deal. That it's a pay as you go. So it's literally I hold a balance of tokens. I'm using the tokens as I would in a vending machine or in a laundromat to conduct a service. So I'm going to put in this many tokens to do this thing. And the beauty then is that, and some of the interesting parts of it are that every single action on the system is cryptographically signed. So it isn't just that, okay, we know that Joe holds a license and he accepted the contract and now he's operating over here and we have to hope he follows the terms. That instead, every single transaction is getting a signature. So, and that the service contract and the token contract can marry up to make a, here's the agreement every time that happens. So we sold those. We sold tokenized micro licenses, which were dragons. And our model was interesting because for multiple reasons. I didn't want to create a bunch of hype. I didn't want to see what happened. If you remember what happened with Mist or with BAT, that they sold out like that, in in an hour or in a couple of blocks, right? Ethereum blocks. And so we wanted to make sure that the people who were new to crypto could participate. And so we put out a month-long sale, and during that sale, we let the price fix itself. That is, we didn't put a cap on what you could buy, but we did put a cap on how many tokens were being sold. So, the more money that came in, the higher the price, and that they would be considered at. It's market based, and for that reason, it didn't hype because no one had. In fact, the tendency was for people to game the system to try to be as quiet as possible. So it's really funny. We would get complaints forever after this that within hours of each other in Telegram, you would have one person saying, "Why is Dragon Chain so quiet? Why do they not market? Why is there nothing out there about this?" All the way to why is Dragon Chain shilling so much? And what is this about Disney and all this other stuff? And it was just crazy because it was. And it might have been based on the channels that people would be listening. I don't know, but it was really funny, but it was successful. And we, having sold those software licenses, had a built-in community, had people generating time. If you want to talk about time later, we had people who then were able to start using the system. We had some really interesting early stuff happen on the tech side, right?
Okay, well, let's just go through some of the basics, right? And something I didn't warn you about, Joe, right? I did tell you that I used to be a social worker. So I'm actually very proud of what I did, and Bitcoin saved me from the bureaucracy of social work, right? That was the toughest part. And yes. I'm not very technical minded. I'm not a coder or anything like that. But I like to think that, I got some facility in taking complex arguments and making them simple, but I don't necessarily get into the detail of the complex arguments.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So just for people who are discovering Dragon Chain, who want to know about it, other community members from the BPSAA projects, because you're a member of the BPSAA. So you said it's a token, but it's a coin, I understand, because it's got its own blockchain, or is it an ERC20?
Or is it is an interesting thing because
token, something new I haven't come across.
I guess it's hard to explain this maybe, but it is kind of all of the above, right? It is primarily
nice and simple.
Its actual legal basis is a tokenized license, right? That has you can do micropayments with of the license. So rather than holding the license and having access to something, it actually uses the license to get access. So it is a token. It is an ERC20. It is an ERC20 because we're an interop project. I mean, that's a big part of what we do. And early on, I even had some of my devs really worried about, is this going to work? Because how are we going to secure that? It's like, of course it's going to work. We leverage Ethereum for that. I mean, that's the killer app of Ethereum is the token, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that it's standards. And why do you do that? You do that because day one, you have immediate ecosystem. You know, we have hardware wallets, you have software wallets, you have block explorers that people can use that we don't have to build that are going to get better and better forever, right? So we leverage that, right? And a lot of people would say, well, when mainnet, right? We went for 2 years. People ask, when mainnet, and it was so funny because I think we finally have it pounded into heads of crypto. Those that still pay attention, a lot of them probably just left, but that it is every node has its own chain. So every node on our entire network has its own blockchain, which means that, and we did that for several reasons. I mean, I'm a software architect, so if you think about it, the fact that it's a hybrid system, that how do you come to worldwide consensus every 5 seconds? You know, our goal inside of Disney was to have a 5-second block that was fixed time. Mm-hmm. That we weren't doing direct proof of work by default. You can do proof of work there, but we leverage proof of work of other chains, number one, and we leverage the staking or the decentralized key management of other nodes, right? So it's an interesting system, but leveraging Ethereum for the token and mapping it to the internal means that we can scale like crazy. And the fact that every blockchain has its node, or sorry, its own blockchain. Every node has its own blockchain. It means that those business requirements can be accomplished no matter what they are. That you could run literally a telco network and still use this blockchain because people say it's impossible, you can't scale a blockchain. It's like it's not impossible. Number one, that when you break them apart, so structurally,
okay,
this blockchain
hold on. Before we go into that, Joe, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're twisting my head.
Yeah.
So right? Okay, so this is an ERC20 token that has nodes that can have an infinite number of blockchains off the nodes, and that can also go onto the Bitcoin, and it's a node protocol, but also proof of work. You can leverage that and leverage proof of stake. None of this makes any sense. And I said earlier that I think I'm good about taking it into simple terms. I think I've reached my limits here.
Yeah, it's something that often we sometimes struggle with. People who have preconceived notions, this is what a blockchain is and this is all it is, right?
Yeah.
And, decentralization is part of it, but is not, you take all these components, the chain of blocks themselves is by name, the main part of it, but not necessarily truthfully the whole picture. Proof of work is a piece of it. Proof of stake is a piece of it. We actually in our white paper even cite that we don't think that every proof has been, is out there yet, that there are going to be other proofs that are applied to blockchains. And we built to that. We have abstracted the proof. And we did that for very clear reasons. And if you think of security, and I guess on even interop, we have multiple dimensions of interop that are both possible and have been addressed inside of Dragon Chain. I mean, the first is the obvious token swap. That's what, if you talk about interop on crypto Twitter, everybody thinks you're talking about token swap, right? I have a coin over here and I want to move it to that chain. And it's brilliant and it's amazing. And we've run our implementation of that, we call it wormholes, on Dragon Chain since the beginning. That's how we do all of our billing systems. I mean, that's how we mapped Ethereum inside of our network, right? And I think that's probably the least valuable, or at least in immediate world, the least valuable form of interop that there is for this technology as a whole. The second is for security, and this one we use. And when you talk about our level 5 blockchains on Dragon Chain, those are the ones that connect the rest of the network to Bitcoin, Ethereum, any other. And you could have multiple. We happen to only run one per external network right now, just as a matter of cost. We're talking about federating that. There are a few things that are possible where other people can run those nodes, but primarily right now it's the most expensive part about running the network, or maybe the second most expensive part, depending on what month it is. But what we leverage there is the ability to take something that is not scalable. And when I say not scalable, it's scalable to some degree, but it is not scalable either. Bitcoin and Ethereum as an example, they're not scalable to a level that most industries would consider scalable in their in a business enterprise. That you couldn't add 1 million new users overnight, or 1 million new users with a lot of activity overnight on Bitcoin or Ethereum without some major effects, right? We've seen it on Ethereum a lot because Ethereum has been very successful with especially the DeFi activity and other things. So what we do is, I could give you the technical way we do it. It's a very simple approach, very obvious approach, but we use these nodes to aggregate blocks from all of the other nodes, which are then hashed into proven on Bitcoin and Ethereum. So on Dragon Chain, if you have a business node, you're throwing transactions at it, ledger transactions, smart contract transactions, whatever they are, it's doing its thing. Every block that is created, so every 5 seconds, if any activities happen, a block's created, right? That block is sent up for level 2 validation, which is literally I should say, the payload, the business payload, is taken out. So we have 2 sets of hashes, right? So one hash is for the whole transaction, so we can prove everything as a business. The second hash is everything except for the payload, so that the verification network, DragonNet, doesn't have to see your payload to do its business, right? Because it doesn't care about your business. And that's a huge philosophical switch from what both Ethereum does and Bitcoin does and what Hyperledger does. And it's an interesting thing that it wasn't an intentional philosophical leap there. But because we were primarily saying, okay, how can we not send that private data? Because it could be a customer's PII, it could be financial data, it could be anything. How do we still get to some worldwide consensus without exposing that, right? And it's pretty much just like, well, that's the business's business, literally. It's the equivalent of having a side system that just throws a hash at a network, right? But it's out of the box. So you basically throw a transaction in, the payload's ripped out, it's sent up for validation. Then that validation is sent up for verification that you have multiple groups that are not you saying, yes, these are valid transactions on this block. And then that goes up to a notary, which at Disney, it was intended to be an external entity. In Dragon Chain, we don't have to make an external entity because the entire network is external entities, but it is literally a notary that has an identified node owner that is either an individual or a company that says, yes, my node signed this on this day, not knowing anything about it, but it is a hash, right? So it's literally just a notary effect. And then all of those blocks are aggregated and thrown onto Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? And Ethereum Classic and whatever else is running. Because we've had BINANCE chain running before, we've had Neo running before. We're usually looking to partner for that type of thing. But what it gives you is the ability to hide all of your data as a user or as a company until you need it. And it also gives you the ability to put in things that you or your legal team, for any reason, might think, well, this is mundane data, but in this case, if somebody sues us or if the regulators come in and say we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, that you can take all of that data, and the more mundane data you have, the better. This is a logical or philosophical issue with proving something that trash in, trash out. That is, if I'm showing you a transaction that happened last month, that says that, okay, I followed the transaction only says I followed the GDPR process. It's kind of meaningless because that would just mean, okay, you asked for something and I'm just putting it on chain but not doing anything, and showing that alone does not actually prove it, right? So the interesting thing about it is to really prove that the process is followed, or that to really prove that these events occurred. It's better to have more mundane events tied to it. That is, that you could see the whole picture, and it's not something that someone would have typically done at that time, not knowing events in the future, right? That I could look back and say, okay, last month I can be reasonably sure that you did follow the process because I can see 150 transactions related to the question that I have, and you're able to, even though these were never exposed, you are able to send me this bundle, and I can see that you actually did these things, that the data that I'm seeing is unmodified, and that it occurred between these 2 blocks on Bitcoin and these 2 blocks on Ethereum, right? It's a really interesting thing, and what we do then is we take we capture the metrics for hash power, convert it with the ratings of the best miners, it's to be conservative, and then map that energy use to a dollar figure estimate again. But it gives you what we've seen in practice most days, and it changes obviously because Bitcoin hash power moves up and down, especially with weird things in the economy. But that you get typically about $8 million a day worth of network security energy applied to every single one of your transactions, and that's like, I think it's about 250 million a month and about 3 billion a year, right? So it's a very interesting thing, and you can even go further on talking about how the proof works, and not being technical, right? I have to try to find ways to explain it where it's more of a logical issue.
Here's the way, right? So so Dragon Chain is an enterprise solution. So, and I understand you have existing business relationships. So there are projects and companies, commercial, perhaps governmental, that are using Dragon Chain. Give us a few examples, not necessarily naming the projects unless they're public, in which case go ahead, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of why they're using Dragon Chain and how they're using Dragon Chain.
Okay. I can give a couple of public might be easiest because there will be things that then people could go and, read in depth and, really see about them. We could talk about COVID Safe Pass, where we have a partnership with a medical firm, East Coast US, that basically allows integration of test processes. So if you have a test in your county or your state or your company that they want someone to take a COVID test, they want to somehow score it based upon where they work or who they are, or their role, and then basically allow them to come in and show the app without exposing anything, without exposing, this is what I did and maybe I shouldn't have gone out yesterday or anything else, but instead exposing literally whether by the rules they are allowed in to work or not, right? And if that makes sense, I mean, that's the type of thing that it can be used for. But from my angle, it is primarily a way to shield that user's health data from their employer, yet still let them use it, and with the confidence that, let's say it's a restaurant or something, that everybody coming into the restaurant can have the confidence that everybody in the kitchen is safe, right? And they can look it up. They can't see, oh, that's Jim or that's Jane, but what they can see is that the processes were followed. They can look at the smart contracts, and we use the ledgering, very simple ledgering on the blockchain side, and decentralized ID, right? And so we have a decentralized identity system that was built in 2018. That's the first. I believe that's the first commercial use of it, and we have, we just spun it off, and so there are 3 new customers there. Then another one is
hold on, Joe. What's wrong with using a non-blockchain solution for that, right? Because there's plenty of passes. Passports aren't blockchain solution.
Yeah.
Other ID cards and stuff, or even like a library card doesn't use the blockchain. What's the advantage that the COVID pass has by using blockchain?
It is the reason you would want to use blockchain is it would be a central ledger, right? Or I said decentralized ledger, but it's a single place that we can all, if I have this ledger, you have this ledger, we can look at the data, versus it being, on a government computer somewhere, whether it's a library or passport. But that alone doesn't solve it. The decentralized identity piece solves the real issue, is that it shouldn't be centralized at all. It shouldn't be exposed at all. It should only be available to me, the owner of that identity info, and it should be up to me which parts of that identity to expose, right? And we use that capability to say, okay, all of the scoring, the test results, the fact that you took the test is all on chain, or how do I say, the evidence is on chain. The data is on your phone or your desktop or wherever you want to keep it. And we have some flexibility to take part of it if if the user or the business requires something to be held. Sometimes that is the case anyway, even legally. So all of that's flexible. But the beauty is, the pure case that I'm holding my data. You're asking me, what date were you born? It's like, do you need the date, or you just need to know that I'm over 21? You say, oh, I just need to know that you're over 21. It's like, okay, I can prove I'm over 21. Yeah, right. Yeah, so it's like you're born. You could say, I could expose that I have brown eyes. I could, expose that I'm over a certain height without exposing my actual height. I mean, things like that. But it's totally, should be up to the whim of the user, right? And so we use that there. The other one that's a pretty big one, and we've had our first phase, and we're hoping to get the next phase rolled out sometime soon. But it's there's a lot of stuff that they're integrating, is with BitCute exchange in the U.S., which is the first set was to prove trades. So they're ledgered on chain. Not the biggest deal there. The magic is, and it's the first of many pieces, but the magic is when they turn on, or what we have been calling order book processing. But it's basically that every single order. So every time a bot switches price, closes, opens a new order, is going to be on chain. Why? Because when you marry that up with a trade, so you say, okay, I made a trade, I bought some Bitcoin, right? That they will be able to prove that the order that was executed against your trade pre-existed your trade. It wasn't just rolled up in front, like, which we hear a lot of the, trading systems in the world, even in the traditional markets, do that. I didn't even know what it was called. I knew it was something, and they had to tell me, it's front running, right? Like, oh, okay, that's what that's called, right? But they were really excited about the idea, and we're building that out right now with them. And then it'll probably extend also to KYC and also a few other build outs. But it's all native blockchain stuff, and it's all extremely fast. I mean, we do pride ourselves. I mean, when we talk about scalability and everything else, it isn't just a technical matter. It very much is. It goes all the way down to the end user. That when you go to Dragon Chain Academy, you go to academy.dragonchain.org, right? You take one of those courses. You scroll through them. It looks like a modern, courseware system where it tracks your progress through. You can walk away, come back, you log in, it'll come back where you left off. Your quizzes you go through, then you get a certification, right? Mm-hmm. You would never know, because the user experience is so clean, that it is a pure blockchain native system. There's no database behind it. In fact, we built it very early. We built it on our first year out because it was on the roadmap. It's okay. We need to do something for Academy so people can learn about this stuff. And we ended up saying, let's build it the right way. And the guys is unbelievable. They built it in 5 weeks, native blockchain. In fact, we haven't been able to update it as much as we would like to. It's still running on an old version of Dragon Chain. But we have to make sure that it keeps functioning every time we do upgrades. But it's amazing because you would never know. It's responsive, it's clean, it's simple, it's pretty, and in the end, when you get a certification, or let's say you get a certification that you took a series of courses, that is on chain, right? So you could take that anywhere. They don't have to come to Dragon Chain and ask, did Jim really take this course? And they can prove it to you. And it's an interesting thing because that has turned into something that we really do use, that trying to convince people that are in blockchain and want to build something that they don't have to follow a lot of the same models that are out there where, okay, I need a wallet. I need a wallet to hold my coins, and I need, and it's like, we typically say, don't call it a wallet, because it'll get you mentally into a couple of places that make you less flexible, right? What we say is, you have an account, you have an identity, so people can log in without logging in. They don't even know they've logged in. They're starting to use your system, but they already have a key pair generated, right? There's already an identity created, but it's totally anonymous at this point. And over time, you as a business, or if it's a game or something else, can build on that identity for them, right? And they're still holding it, so you don't have the liability of someone hacking into your system and stealing their, PII, or especially if you're in Europe or certain other places with legal restrictions on identity use. That it's cleaner for you, safer for you, it's better for them, it's more privacy for them, and yet the whole thing is a better user experience, because it doesn't start with, okay, you want to use my system, give me your username, give me your email, give me a password, save it somewhere, all of that stuff that people have ingrained into their minds about how you use computers now and how you use websites, that instead it is very much, okay, you start using my system, there's an identity attached, so when you come back, where you left off. But as soon as some level, and it fully depends on the system, some level of value is attached. It could be cryptocurrency value. You could have been rewarded in crypto or something, but it could just be points, or it could be just you've obviously done something that you wouldn't want to lose, right? At that point, then you can start instituting, we recommend, or we require, that you back up your ID, and here's how you do it. And it's, then you go to some of the typical ways to back up a key and everything. And the other side of it is, if there is a crypto component, which is when it, in my opinion, probably a lot of people listening, when it really becomes interesting is, let's say you have a game, and the game has some scarcity built in, and it's a blockchain based scarcity. There's some really amazing tech that we've worked with others on there, even to, all by itself would be interesting to talk about. But that scarcity means I have an item in the game, whatever the item is. People get that. In a non-crypto game, I can sell the item in the game, or I can just hold it and like a badge or whatever else. But when you have a crypto system, it's interesting, because a lot of the game developers that we've talked to, especially the ones that are really established, don't understand that they've been working entirely in closed economies. They understand how to model closed economies, but when they try to work with open economies, it's a hit or miss, because it's a totally different world. You can't control all of the mechanics then, right? Because stuff is going to happen outside of your game that you can't touch, you can't affect. It's going to be, for some reason, this token becomes valuable some way you don't expect, right? And so what we try to do is say, focus on the game, make the game fun, or ideally take a game that already is fun, that's already modeled for a normal person who doesn't care anything about crypto to actually have fun playing. Mm-hmm. Then you add these scarce items, you add things that could be valuable in crypto. That here's something scarce that I don't need, maybe somebody else does. I can take it outside the network. That what we tend to do is say, let the people play it, and when they realized, it's like, wait a minute, you're telling me these items I have are worth like $400 or something. All of a sudden, I'm interested, and now I'm okay doing the extra research that I need to do as a normal person who's never touched crypto before. It's like, I have $400 there. I'm going to go find out how to pull it out, right? That now now I'm serious, and now it's not a bad user experience, right? If you start that at the beginning, it's a bad user experience. People think crypto is crazy. You have to be a technophile. You have to be an engineer to use it. If you flip it on the other side, you're going to get a lot more adoption. If it's simple to use, and there's a value to doing something, anybody will do it, right? So it becomes a really interesting thing, and we're using it a lot of places where we try to make everything on the front end grandma friendly, at least as much as possible. It's still software, so sometimes new systems have quirks, but that's the goal, and it works. It's pretty amazing.
Okay. Now you mentioned time. Now here's how I understand it, and I'm not someone who's new to crypto. So, right. So if I hold the tokens in my wallet, in my Ether wallet, I get rewarded time which is another token, depending upon the length that I hold the original Dragon tokens for. A little bit like, I think, Skycoin and coin hours. If I hold Skycoin in my wallet, I get, the longer I hold it, I earn coin hours. Is that
it's a little bit like that, correct? It's okay. So there is, and I'll tell you what led to it. We in 2017, I brought up to the team, have you guys ever heard of Bitcoin Days Destroyed? So have you ever heard of that?